Yo, what is up, guys? Today we're going to be talking about the top 5 best smartphones for $200 and under. I want to start off with the iPhone 8. I think the iPhone 8 is a really good buy in 2021, especially if you're an iPhone person, and it just held up really great. So since I've been using it, it still feels solid in the hand. It's got a premium design, aluminum frame, glass back on here, and it's a more compact phone, so it's definitely easier to use for people with smaller hands. It's IP67 dust and water resistant as well, so you can get it wet, it won't break immediately. And you have a 4.7-inch IPS display on here. It's 720p plus, 326 for the PPI. Overall, it's still a fairly bright and colorful display. I don't really see any issues with it because of the size of it. Like I said, it's more of a compact phone, so if you want something that's definitely smaller and easy to handle, this is definitely a phone to take a look at. One of the most impressive things with the iPhone 8 is that it's actually still running the latest version of iOS 14.6, so all of your widgets and all of that stuff is on here now, which is really nice. So having the latest software on an older flagship phone is definitely a plus. So this thing runs extremely fast, very buttery smooth, which I was really impressed with. It has the Apple A11 chip on here, and it actually still does a great job at gaming. If you watch my gaming test, PUBG, Call of Duty, they run pretty well on this device. I was really surprised with that. So power wise, this phone is still very capable of casually gaming. Of course, there's no SD card support on iPhone. 64 gigs of internal storage, 2 gigs of RAM on here. You also have some pretty decently loud stereo speakers on here as well. They got pretty good bass quality. No headphone jack, of course, and then you have NFC on here with your Apple Pay. You also have Touch ID, which still works great in 2021. It's very fast. I had no issues with it. It even comes in handy with these times with the mask and stuff like that. And also the camera on the iPhone 8, I think this is the only area where you can say it's a little dated because you only have a single lens, a 12 megapixel lens. Most phones you'll have an ultra wide or macro or something thrown in there, but this lens is still takes decent photos, especially at this price point. It's 4K video. You also get a 7 megapixel selfie that shoots in 1080p. I thought it was fine for FaceTime and stuff like that. The video is solid. Pictures on here, you get pretty decent detail. Color accuracy is okay. Overall, I wasn't not impressed with the cameras. I thought they were pretty solid at this price. So you do have on here a very small battery, 1821 milliamp battery. Depending on your battery health, I usually can average around 4 to 5 hours of screen on time with this phone, which is actually pretty decent for the size of it. You also have wireless charging on this device as well, which is really nice. So the iPhone 8 is definitely a phone that you consider checking out. I think one of my favorite phones on this list is still the Galaxy S10e. It's right now hovering at below 250 right now, so it's pretty impressive. I'll put those links down below, and this phone offers a lot for the price point. You have an aluminum frame on here, glass back, a really nice and compact design, IP68 dust and water resistant as well. This phone also has a dynamic AMOLED display, HDR10 Plus, so a beautiful display as far as colors and just sharpness. It's a 5.8-inch 1080p display, 438 for the PPI, so it looks really good. You have the punch hole on the right hand side, which is fine. So overall brightness and everything is just really good. So it's just a solid display overall. You're running Android 11 on top of the One UI skin, which pretty much runs flawlessly. It runs very fast with the Snapdragon 855 and the Adreno 640 on here. You're getting pretty good gaming performance as well with this phone. There's not a game that this phone can't really play, so I was really impressed with that. Call of Duty, Fortnite, whatever you want to play, it still pretty much has a flagship chipset in it, which is really nice. So you do have micro SD support along with 128 gigs of internal storage and 6 gigs of RAM. You also have some very loud and nice sounding stereo speakers on here tuned by AKG, so they sound really crisp and you get good bass quality too. In addition, you also have a headphone jack on the S10e, which is really nice. So this phone also has NFC for mobile payments, and the fingerprint scanner is side mounted, and with the power button that works flawlessly. You can also take advantage of face unlock. This phone also has pretty good cameras too, a dual camera setup, a 12 megapixel standard and a 16 megapixel ultra wide. You get 4K video at 60 frames per second, and then a selfie camera at 10 megapixels with 4K video, also capable of 60 frames per second, which is really nice. So overall, the cameras on the S10e are definitely still good. As you can see from the shots here, you get pretty good detail. Color accuracy is pretty decent for the most part, and you also get a pretty good ultra wide on here. It takes very good detailed shots as well. So overall, I was really impressed with just the selfie camera with skin tones and stuff like that. So overall, the cameras have aged well. The S10e's battery life is pretty decent. You have a 3100 milliamp battery, 15-watt charging with fast charging and reverse wireless charging as well. So you do have that option to charge another device on the back of the S10e, which is pretty cool. So if you have headphones or another phone, it's really a cool feature to have. But as far as battery life, it's pretty average, around 6 hours of screen on time you can get out of this phone, which is, it's not terrible for the size. Next is the Samsung Galaxy A32. This is overall a really solid phone from Samsung. You have on here, not a fancy design, it's just a plastic phone. I think the design looks fine. I think it looks really clean. This phone stands out with a Super AMOLED display at 90 Hz, so you get a high refresh rate 90 Hz display at this price point, which is really nice. It's 1080p at 6.4 inches, 411 for the PPI. Overall, it's a really nice display as far as color wise. Like I said, that 90 Hz is very smooth. You do have a water drop notch, which I do prefer punch hole, but overall the display was really nice, and it got fairly bright as well, which I was really happy with. This phone runs Android 11 with the One UI 3.1, so it ran pretty snappy with the Helio G80 Mali G52 GPU. For casual use, this phone is fine navigating social media, casually gaming. You definitely won't have a problem with performance on this phone. I found it to be just fine for, again, casual use. So you do have micro SD support, 128 gigs of internal storage and 4 gigs of RAM. You also have on here a headphone jack, which is really nice. No stereo speakers, just a single speaker, but it does a fairly good job. It gets loud enough. And you do have on here NFC, so you do have that for your mobile payments. The fingerprint scanner is actually under the display, and it works pretty fast, so I was really impressed with that. And also, the real selling point with this phone is that this phone still has some really good cameras. A quad camera setup at 64 megapixels, 8 megapixel ultra wide, 5 megapixel macro and depth sensor, but you only get 1080p, which I think is a little low by today's standard, and a 20 megapixel selfie that also shoots in 1080p. But as you can see, the image quality is pretty good on the A32. I really love that this phone has the macro camera to get really close in. You have that depth of field to give you those nice blurry shots, and overall detail is there. Color accuracy is pretty much on point. So overall, I enjoyed the cameras on the A32. I think they're solid. Another really great thing about this phone is the massive 5000 milliamp battery on here. Will definitely last you all day, if not 2 days. So I'm really impressed with the A32 here. Alright, next is the LG G8. This is an excellent older flagship phone you should definitely check out. It's got a glass and metal design, and you also have IP68 dust and water resistant on here. It's the only phone on the list with a 1440p display at 6.1 inches, POLED HDR10, 564 for the PPI. Overall, it is a really beautiful display as far as colors and sharpness. It just looks really good. And like I said, only phone on here with 1440p resolution, so if you watch videos in 1440p, they're gonna look excellent. This phone also has the Snapdragon 855 and Adreno 640, so navigating Android, this phone has always been pretty smooth for me. And you do have really good gaming performance on here, so you can game on this phone no problem. You also have micro SD support and 128 gigs of internal storage and 6 gigs of RAM. You also get a headphone jack with a quad DAC, so if you want some high quality audio listening, you can do that on this phone no problem. You do have technically stereo speakers, which sound great, so I've never had an issue with that. NFC is on board with your mobile payments as well, and you also have really good face unlock on this phone too. So this phone also has pretty good cameras, a 12 megapixel standard and a 16 megapixel ultra wide. You get 4K video at 60 frames per second and 8 megapixel selfie camera that shoots in 1080p at 60 frames. And overall, as you can see, it takes fairly good pictures. You get really good detail, very good ultra wide camera on here. You also get very natural colors. So overall, I was still impressed with the G8's cameras. You can also put Gcam on this phone as well. So this phone also has fairly good battery life, a 3500 milliamp battery with 21 watt fast charging with wireless charging. Overall, this is definitely an all-day phone for me if you're a casual user. So overall, the G8 is definitely a phone you should check out. Lastly, the Poco M3. This phone is around 170 right now. And the main selling point with this phone is just the massive battery. So you have a 6000 milliamp battery, the biggest battery on this list. So if you want sort of like the ultimate battery experience, this is definitely a phone you should check out. But the rest of the phone is pretty solid. You have on here a pretty interesting design. It's a pretty out there design. It's just plastic design, but it does look pretty cool. So you do have a 6.5 inch display, an IPS panel, 1080p 395 for the PPI. Overall, the display quality is really good. It's a water drop notch, and I had no issues with it. Got fairly bright, and colors were pretty decent. You do have one here, Android 10, of course, with MIUI 12, the Snapdragon 662 and 610 GPU, and the performance on here is fine. I think for casual use, gaming and stuff on here, just navigating social media was fine. I didn't have any major hiccups with this phone as far as performance. So that was really nice. You also get micro SD support, 64 gigs of internal storage, and 6 gigs of RAM. And again, that depends on which variant you get. So you do have on here dual speakers, which sounded really nice. I was really impressed that at this price point you get very loud and very nice sounding dual speakers. You also have a headphone jack on board, but this phone does not have NFC. I believe there is a version with NFC, but you have to make sure you get the right variant. So this phone also has the fingerprint scanner side mounted, which works very fast as well. And this phone still takes pretty decent photos, a 48 megapixel standard, 2 megapixel macro, and 2 megapixel depth. They opted out of the ultra wide, which kind of sucks. So that's my only gripe with the camera system. It shoots in 1080p. 8 megapixel selfie that shoots in 1080p. Overall image quality is fine. Like I said, for this price, I wasn't really complaining. But again, I would have liked to see an ultra wide with this phone. You also have, like I said, the 6000 milliamp battery is really the selling point. If you really want something that's gonna last you for days, then this is definitely it. So thanks for watching this video, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.